18-year-old Kevin Davis got into an argument with his mother, Kimberly Hill, when he had asked for permission to kill himself. When she got upset, he then decided to kill her instead. He tried to strangle her, but he could not overpower her, so instead he beat her in the head with a hammer. Kimberly was still alive, so Kevin reached his hand into her skull and squeezed her brains to finish her off. He then lost his virginity to his mother's corpse. He fled the house after the incident and confessed to a couple who then called the police. Kevin confessed to police and was sentenced to life in prison. When asked why he did it, he replied that his mother was the best and she did nothing to deserve it. Quote, "I don't have standards, I don't have morals, a body is a body, a piece of meat."
What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel. I want to thank y'all because this channel been sitting at a little over 500 subscribers for a little minute, but I still want to thank y'all, man. I appreciate y'all support, man. Y'all making me feel good about this content and the content that I put out, man. I am glad y'all are enjoying it, man. Now we on the road to 1,000, so let's get there. If you watching, like, subscribe, get in the comments, engage. Also, join the Discord. Send videos that you want to see me react to, man. But let's get right to it.
Part 79. In 2001, Shantae Mallard hit homeless man Gregory Briggs with her vehicle. He got lodged in her windshield and was critically injured. Instead of seeking help, she drove home and parked in the garage with him still in the windshield. She checked on him several times and apologized as he begged and pleaded for help. He died several hours later at the age of 37. To make it even worse, she actually worked as a nurse's aide. She would later admit that she was messed up on alcohol and ecstasy at the time. She then had two friends help her dump the body and attempt to destroy the vehicle. 4 months later, she was at a party talking about the incident and a partygoer actually reported her to police. She received 50 years for murder and 10 years for tampering with evidence. She is eligible for parole in 2027.
Bro, that is crazy. Like, how can you not want to help somebody that you hit? Like, what type of heartless world we live in? You drove down the street like nobody saw you. Well, nobody probably did see her or something. I don't know. How does that even work? How can you drive down the street with somebody lodged in your windshield and nobody see it? Oh, that's crazy, man. If y'all know, get in the comments and let me know, man.
This is probably one of the worst true crime cases that I've ever heard of. In August of 2019, David S1E brutally beat his mom to death and then took 277 photos on his cell phone of the gruesome crime scene. The photos included selfies with her body, posing with blood smeared on his face, and even a photo of him giving a thumbs up. After he brutally killed her, he put her body in the bathtub and proceeded to record himself washing off her corpse. When the family couldn't get a hold of 67-year-old Margaret S1E on August 31st, 2019, they knew something was wrong. After trying for 2 days with no success, they had the police conduct a welfare check at her Pennsylvania home. When authorities couldn't reach Margaret, they forcibly entered the home where they discovered shattered glass everywhere and blood smeared on the walls and furniture. Upon investigating, they then found Margaret's badly beaten body in her bathtub. According to the autopsy report, she died from blunt force trauma to the head, neck, and torso. When interviewed by authorities, David initially stated he had nothing to do with his mom's murder. But when police searched his phone, they found the 277 gruesome photos. Along with that, authorities also found Margaret's jewelry and 3 of her blank checks inside of a hotel room where David had been staying. David was arrested on September 4th, and during his trial, a defense expert stated that at the time of the murder, he had taken a high dosage of Adderall, which caused diminished mental capacity. His lawyer argued that the murder was strictly due to drug and alcohol use. David was initially facing a first-degree murder charge as well as abuse of a corpse, and if he was charged with that, he would have faced life in prison without parole. But unfortunately, he was allowed to enter a guilty plea, which dropped both of those charges, and instead he pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. He was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison, but since he's been behind bars since his arrest in 2019, he could potentially be released in just 17 years. And the scary part is that according to prison employees, they consider David a model prisoner who attends Bible studies with other inmates. And this makes the reality of him being released so soon a real possibility. It should be noted, though, that David had been arrested twice in the past for assaulting his mother and once for attacking his now deceased father. Adding to this, he also faces a pending case for allegedly waterboarding and strangling an ex-girlfriend, which also took place the year of the murder. David Sumney is a terrifying man, and the fact that he could ever be released back into society is a terrifying thing.
Man, and there's always the sick-minded people that go into these facilities and act as if nothing ever even happened. So you have to ask yourself, are these people really crazy, right? Or do they actually know what they're doing? They know exactly what they're doing. There's no sick in the range. I'm starting to think that people like me or you that act normal or what we think is normal are sick in the range, and the way that they act is the normal way to act. I know that sounds crazy, but just think about it though. How can you do something that gruesome to your own mom? You get to prison and they label you a model prisoner. What's a model prisoner?
18-year-old Kevin Davis got into an argument with his mother, Kimberly Hill, when he had asked for permission to kill himself. When she got upset, he then decided to kill her instead. He tried to strangle her, but he could not overpower her, so instead he beat her in the head with a hammer. Kimberly was still alive, so Kevin reached his hand into her skull and squeezed her brains to finish her off. He then lost his virginity to his mother's corpse. He fled the house after the incident and confessed to a couple who then called the police. Kevin confessed to police and was sentenced to life in prison. When asked why he did it, he replied that his mother was the best and she did nothing to deserve it. Quote, "I don't have standards, I don't have morals. A body is a body, a piece of meat."
Wow, bro. I take back everything I just said.
This is the Icebox Murders case, and it is wild and pretty gruesome. Back in 1965, an elderly couple, Fred and Edwina Rogers, lived at their home in Houston, Texas, along with their son, Charles, who was unemployed and an adult still living with his parents. It was reported that the family was pretty private and actually quite reclusive, especially Charles, who was known as being really antisocial. Most neighbors didn't even know he lived there, because he would skulk out before dawn and come back after dark. On June 23rd of that same year, a family member actually called the police asking them to conduct a welfare check on the couple. He'd phoned them but hadn't been able to get hold of them for several days, and he was concerned. Officers then subsequently attended the residence, but no one answered. So when they forced their way in, there was nothing inside the house. The home was completely empty, except some food laid out on the kitchen table. Thinking this was kind of strange, one of the cops opened the fridge, where they found stacks and stacks of what looked like hog meat in there. As he went to shut the fridge, he glanced down into the vegetable bin, where he saw the two decapitated heads of Fred and Edwina. Yep, the meat in the fridge was them. The autopsy revealed Edwina had been brutally beaten before she was shot and dismembered, whilst Charles had his eyes gouged out, his genitals removed, and died from blunt force trauma to the head. Both of them had their innards flushed down the toilet, and they were later found in a local sewage plant. Charles became the prime suspect in this case. However, he quite literally disappeared off the face of the earth. He was never found and was actually declared dead in July of 1975. Suspected murder weapons such as a claw hammer, a keyhole saw, and scissors were found, but Charles was never found and the case actually remains unsolved. What do you guys think? Do you think it was Charles? What was his motive for doing it? And do you actually think he's dead? This is the Icebox Murders case.
I tell you one thing though, if he is the one that did it, he could possibly still be out there. I'm pretty sure he's probably old as hell right now, but still though, the hate you gotta have for your own parents to do that. But you know me, I'm unbiased, right? So you gotta go back and check childhood, like how bad did they treat him? I know that's no excuse, man, but got to treat our children right, man. We gotta treat them right. That's sick though, bro. I wouldn't want my kids doing nothing like that to me. Wow.
One of the most shocking murders of 2022 is by a doctor, Ronaldo Ortiz, an anesthesiologist out of Dallas. This
Not
is
the
surveillance
doctor.
footage of him tampering with IV bags outside of the operating room, into which he allegedly injected poisonous medications. One of his colleagues who used one of these bags to rehydrate herself suffered cardiac arrest and died. It was noticed that after he was depositing these bags, otherwise healthy patients would have cardiac complications that were unexpected. This led to cardiac emergencies in 11 patients and the death of a colleague.
Bro, that's scary. Knowing how we trust doctors all day, every day, bro, with our lives, bro. This is why I am officially on this channel. I am promoting natural remedy health. Okay, get your natural remedies. Do your detoxes, man. Take care of yourself, so you don't need a doctor. The only way that I would trust a doctor is if I need a surgery. That's it, man. Because, bro, we in the age of information and things. Too many things are being uncovered for me to say, yeah, I still trust doctors the same way I did 20 years ago.
This might be the most gruesome death of all time, and whenever you do, don't look up the picture. This is 18-year-old Nikki Castoris, and on Halloween 2006, she crashed her father's Porsche 11 driving at more than 100 miles per hour. She was trying to switch lanes when she suddenly clipped another car, lost control, and then flew over the middle of the highway onto traffic lanes and into a concrete toll booth. And when police arrived, they walked into literally a nightmare. They arrived minutes later and they found Nikki's body still strapped to the driver's seat, but her head, however, was no longer attached to it. Nikki's head was completely severed in half and it wasn't a head anymore. I can't even describe what it looks like because it's so disturbing. The wreckage and the scene were so brutal that the coroner wouldn't let her parents identify her body. But unfortunately, her parents were not spared from seeing the gruesome scene. Photographs of Nikki's death had somehow found their way onto the internet and they spread extremely quickly. MySpace pages who were acting as some sort of tribute for Nikki's death posted the horrifying pictures of the accident. Nikki's parents then received countless emails of the photographs, and there was no escaping the trauma. I really urge you never to look up this photo because it might be one of the most disturbing things you will ever see. This case should be an eye-opener to everybody to not drive recklessly, because as you can tell, your life can be taken from you in a split second.
Well, seems like she has some good friends.
These are some of the most gruesome murders ever committed, Part 1. The case of Lisa Montgomery, otherwise known as the Womb Raider. Lisa Montgomery, who was a 43-year-old woman, was the first lady ever to be executed after being sentenced to 67 years in prison for committing a murder that literally shocked America. In 2004, Montgomery was sentenced to life after murdering a young woman named Bobby Jo Sinnett and then moving on to cutting open her stomach, removing her womb and her baby using a kitchen knife. See, Montgomery had claimed for a long time that she couldn't have kids, so she befriended Sinnett thinking that she could take her baby. So what she did was showed up at her house, strangled her with a rope, and proceeded to cut her open. The dead body was actually discovered by Sinnett's mother, who walked into a bloody pile and claimed her daughter looked like she had just exploded. But even after all that, the baby did survive and was returned to her father, where she is now about to turn 16 years old. That's insane.
Wow. Damn. That's all I can say, folks. Y'all get in the comments and let me know what y'all think.
This is the most disturbing cartel murder ever, and this is the trigger warning. Maria Fernanda Garcia Alvarez was a 16-year-old girl who was executed by some drug cartel members on suspicion of investigating against them. She was missing since July 15th, 2021, and a few months later, a gruesome video of her execution began circulating on gore sites and Reddit. The video is 2 minutes and 31 seconds long, and the setting looks like some sort of forest or some trail in the woods near a forest. When the video starts, Maria is on her knees with her hands tied behind her back. She is wearing jeans and a white blouse shirt. And the look on her face will keep you up at night. She is surrounded by at least 3 gang members, the cameraman, the one holding a gun against her head, and the other holding a pretty long knife against her throat. The opening 50 seconds is your usual cartel interrogation. The interrogation is translated to, interrogator demands her name. She replies, Maria Fernanda Garcia Alvarez. The interrogator then asked, who was the person who ordered you to infiltrate us? Maria replies, Fernando Mendoza. The interrogator then asked, who planned all the stuff you're doing? She says Fernando and Francisco. The interrogator then says, tell us the people who infiltrated us. Give us nicknames. She replies Oscar and then another name that can't be made out. Finally, he asked, who did you report to on everything we did? Maria said, Fernando Mendoza. The killer then ends the negotiation by saying, now you'll see why you don't want to play with us. As the video plays out, it is extremely hard to watch. Maria is panic breathing and on the verge of tears. Her killer then proceeds to cut into her throat while holding his hand over her mouth and bringing the knife back and forth like a saw. And while watching, you can instantly tell the knife isn't sharp enough to cut clean through a neck, which makes this 100 times worse for Maria.
Sheesh.
Maria is screaming and screaming while crying hysterically. The sound of this is horrific and will keep you up at night. Eventually, the knife gets through the skin and into her throat. And at this point, Maria's screams change pitch dramatically. She tries to struggle, but the other man holds her in place. Her screams get deeper as the killer continues to cut and cut and cut. For a split second, she manages to move her head, which frees the killer's hand from her mouth. She then lets out a desperately loud scream that you wish you've never heard. The killer then regains control and puts his hand back over her mouth and continues cutting. She is still screaming after a minute of having her throat cut.
Wow,
At this
man.
point, it seems like the killer is losing his composure, I would say, for Maria's screams, and then takes the tip of the knife and puts it into her throat and pushes it down with his palm, right into Maria's windpipe, and at this point, her screams change in pitch again. You almost hear the scream and air leave her throat. The killer then moves the knife side to side to try and make the wound bigger, and after all this, Maria is still conscious.
Wow,
The killer then proceeds
bro.
to stab Maria in the stomach a couple times, and seems desperate to get the job done. And it's extremely apparent that this is his first time doing anything like this. He then proceeds cutting her throat and stabs the knife again into her body. At this point, Maria's body then goes limp. The killer then looks at the camera and throws up the peace sign, and the video ends. This is truly one of the most sickening cases I've ever researched, and it's a shame stuff like this happens daily. I beg you to never go searching for this video because it's really sickening and sad, and it will honestly just ruin your day or might even ruin weeks of your life.
It's like every time I do these videos, they get worse and more worse. Sheesh.
Hi, can someone explain to me why this man is not in jail? This is the owner of Return to Nature Funeral Home in Colorado Springs, Colorado. After a report of an abhorrent smell on his property, authorities raided it and found 115 improperly stored, decomposing bodies. The CBI announced today that that number has actually risen. The number of individuals found is up to at least 189, and they said that number could increase. This man and his wife were selling grieving families fake ashes, allegedly. So why is this man not in jail yet? Can they not get him on anything?
Why would you want to sell fake ashes? Why would you want to keep these bodies? Could it be organ harvesting or something? You can't even trust funeral homes, bro. That's why you got to do everything naturally, bro. You have to do everything naturally, man. We have to go back to like burying our own loved ones like our ancestors did, you know, because we know we would do it with love. But we just let any and everybody handle us now. It's crazy, man.
This man imprisoned his own daughter in a bunker for 24 years. Meet Josef Fritzl, an Austrian man who was responsible for imprisoning and sexually abusing his own daughter, Elisabeth Fritzl, for 24 years in a concealed basement beneath his home.
What?
During this period, Elisabeth gave birth to 7 children, one of whom died shortly after birth. For 24 years, everyone believed Elisabeth ran away with her boyfriend. Not even her own mother realized that she was trapped right below her. Cops,
Bullshit.
neighbors, friends, and family all visited the Fritzl residence to get answers on Elisabeth's disappearance, but Josef was somehow able to convince everyone that she ran away. The case shocked the world due to its extreme cruelty and the prolonged nature of the abuse. In April 2008, Elisabeth and 3 of her surviving children were freed after one of the children fell seriously ill and required medical attention. Josef Fritzl was arrested and subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment in March 2009.
I thought the mom wasn't there, but the mom was there. There is no way she didn't know. I'm sorry, bro. Both of those people were sick. Man, that's crazy. Can't even trust your own parents.
So what you just saw right there were the final moments of 16-year-old Kalicia Williams' life. In the video, you can see she's recording a TikTok in a Hyatt hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. And right at the end of the video, she's startled by someone who seemingly intrudes into her room. So on December 26, 2020, Kalicia Williams, otherwise known as Pinky by her friends and family, was supposed to go to a Christmas party at an Airbnb. The parent of another teenager who was hosting the party had assured Pinky's family that she would be there chaperoning the event, but that was completely untrue. As it turns out, this party was never going to be at an Airbnb. It ended up being in a hotel room at the Hyatt Regency in Atlanta, Georgia. So obviously something suspicious about all of this is that you can't be a minor and rent a hotel room in America. So on the night that all of this went down, Pinky went to the hotel. She told her mother that she was the first one there. The girls were coming later. Oh, I forgot to mention, this was supposed to be a party for all girls, but there ended up being teenage boys there as well. And at some point during the night, Pinky was shot and killed. Now, according to someone who was there and witnessed this happen, 2 teenage boys actually carried Pinky's body down to the lobby and were saying, "She's been shot, she's been shot." These boys who were later interviewed claimed that they moved her body down to the lobby because of the blood that was in the room, but when investigators took a look at the room later, they noticed that there wasn't a lot of blood. Shortly afterwards, a 16-year-old boy was arrested for some sort of a crime that happened that night, but there's no real details about what happened afterwards. I couldn't find any record of anyone being convicted for the death of Pinky. And I mean, this whole thing really is just so suspicious. I mean, who pulled the trigger? What happened leading up to her death? Why was she killed? Why did a parent rent a hotel room for minors to party in? Why wasn't she there? Why did she lie to people's parents about the fact that she would be there? Why did they lie about it being in an Airbnb? There is just so much about this story that doesn't make sense. I hope that some sort of an answer is revealed in the future, but my heart just goes out to Pinky's parents, her friends and family members. They have been begging the community for some sort of a change, for some sort of an answer, and they haven't really gotten it yet. All they really have that is a concrete clue is this video that shows her final moments.
And you know the saddest part about all of that is we as parents try to give our children a sense of freedom, a sense of independency, right? But with this world today, bro, I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I love my daughters too much, man. And they may be mad at me now, but when they get older, they will appreciate it. I guarantee they will, man, because nobody's going to look after you the way that I look after you. And I'm going to instill that importance of your life and your well-being into you. That's the most important thing to me. Now, it's not them being mad because sometimes they can't go and have fun. If I don't feel right, if my heart tells me that it, or my spirit says, hey, it don't feel right, I'm not gonna let you go. I'm sorry. You coming back the same way you left is the most important thing to me. We gotta put that on the table, parent. I'm sorry. We just got to, because of stuff like this. 16-year-old. Why was she by herself? Why was she allowed to go by herself to a hotel room? Come on, bro. Say it.
Elizabeth Gilreath was only 11 years old when she was the unfortunate victim of one of the most gruesome carnival ride accidents in history. On May 5th, 2016, Elizabeth was riding the Spinning King's Crown ride at a festival in Omaha, Nebraska, when her hair was caught in the ride, ripping her scalp completely from her head. For over 5 minutes, the ride ripped and pulled her around. Elizabeth screamed for the ride to stop, but it didn't. Not until a good Samaritan, Jolene Cisneros, took the initiative to physically stop the ride herself with her bare hands. Elizabeth lost the entirety of her scalp and hair and suffered severe damage to her eyes. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition and ultimately managed to pull through, thanks to the efforts of doctors who completed 2 head surgeries, 3 skin grafts, 1 eye surgery, and 28 blood transfusions.
Wow.
During an interview after the incident, Elizabeth's warning to everyone is not to wear loose clothing and be sure your hair is tied up before you go on a ride.
Man, bro, that's beautiful that she survived, but man, the fact that she even had to go through that, man. Safety measures on these new rides, they have to be improved, man. Because the kid that died on that ride that comes down real fast and it stopped mid-air and he dropped out and hit the ground, bro, that was gruesome, bro.
This is one of the worst cases in human history. This is the murder of Christine Siluan. She was from the Philippines and was a volunteer in church, and she used the church every day from 4 to 6 p.m. On the day of her murder, she went to church as per her schedule, but she didn't come home after that. Her parents then started to worry and they began searching for her with their neighbors. And what they found is absolutely horrid. They found her body in a farm where half her face was sliced like a piece of pizza, and her face was literally skinned down to her skull.
Wow.
Also, her brain was completely destroyed by acid. The police then started investigating and they checked the cameras and found out that she was with a guy. The people started protesting about this case, and the case was then given to special officers. They had a lot of pressure on this. A week before this happened, she broke up with her boyfriend, so the police took him into custody. And he was proving that he was at home all day when she was murdered, but officers were completely tired of this case, and they then sentenced him as the murderer. But after a few months, a thief was caught in a store where he confessed that he murdered and raped Christine. He said he started talking to her on Facebook with a fake account and was using fake photos of another guy that was pretty good looking. Christine fell for the guy and she assumed that he was about 20 years old, and they started texting daily. One day they both decided to meet up at 6 p.m. near the church she went to. But upon arriving, Christine noticed that this was not the guy she was talking to, and he was around 40-ish years old. She then refused to talk to him and tried to go back, but he held her hands extremely forcefully. He then took her far away from town and raped her repeatedly and put iron rods inside her personal organs. He then cut her face in half and then skinned her whole head down to the skull.
But why?
And to make it even worse, he put acid inside of her head. The autopsy also revealed that her tongue, trachea, esophagus, parts of her neck, and her right ear were missing. The self-proclaimed killer of this case, named Renato Lanis, said that he used barber-type scissors and stabbed her 30 times on different parts of her body and skinned her face. Christine Silouan was only 16 years old, and this case is extremely haunting. There's a picture of her body that was found in the field, but Google did a really good job of not showing it and hiding it. So even if you do go looking for the picture, I don't think you're going to find it. This is one of those cases that after you get done reading it, you just feel some sort of uneasiness. I feel so bad for Christine's family, and I can't imagine finding my daughter in this state. May Christine Silouan rest in peace.
Man, my children have every reason to be scared of this world. But they have every reason to live in it too. So this is why you gotta teach your kids some self-defense moves, man. Teach them people's weak points, just in case they get in situations like that, man. They know how to get out. But when we leave our children defenseless, this is what happens. I don't come on here to be just a reaction channel, man. I try to entertain, and I try to put a message in it too, man, because these crimes are heinous, man.
You never go away, so I guess I gotta stay now. Oh, I hope someday I'll make it out of there, even if it takes all night. Oh, I made it.
Hey, so what did he do? Go in there and kill her or something? Hey, man, rest in peace to her.
They're saying Rodder.
Hello, Sheriff's Office! Police Department, Sheriff's Office!
What's up, boy? Same way we came in, don't touch nothing.
On November 26, 2016, Joel Guy Jr. brutally murdered his parents in Knoxville, Tennessee. Guy Jr. had a plan, and to be honest with you, it was absolutely disgusting. His parents were about to retire and cut off his financial support. If they were dead or went missing, he would receive a $500,000 life insurance policy. He stabbed his father 42 times and his mother 31. His plan was to frame his father for all of it. After stabbing his parents, Guy Jr. injured his hand and left the dissolved remains in the house to tend to his wounds. When he returned, he saw that the cops had discovered the bloody scene during a welfare check. They also found a backpack with detailed notes about the attacks. They found plastic bins with dissolved remains, severed hands, and even his mother's head in a pot. In October of 2020, he was convicted of both murders and sentenced to life in prison. This shocking and disturbing case serves as a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk inside of a human mind.
As he should be serving life.
Everyone should know about what has happened to Lauren Heike. Lauren was a 29-year-old esthetician and was hiking near her home in North Phoenix. 24 hours later, she was found murdered off a trail west of Scottsdale Road and Mile Boulevard. Almost immediately, authorities released this footage of a suspect running from the area. This person has since been identified as 22-year-old Zion Teasley. He was arrested at the Scottsdale home he shared with his mother, less than a mile from the scene. We now know that Lauren was followed and then chased down the Route 11 trail before being viciously attacked from behind. She suffered 15 stab wounds to the back and chest, but tried her hardest to put up a fight, with defensive wounds to her arms and her hands. Tragically, investigators believe that she eventually escaped, but her injuries were too severe to keep going. On the trail, police have found Lauren's belongings scattered, presumably dropped as she was running for her life. Her clothing suggested that at one point the chase went through a barbed wire fence, and it was actually DNA in her shoe that led to Zion's arrest. When police submitted this DNA sample, Zion's name came up in court records. Detectives then went to his former workplace, where his ex-coworkers recognized his clothing as merchandise that had been stolen from the store. They said he'd recently been fired for being aggressive towards female employees. Zion has since admitted to detectives that, like Lauren, he frequented the area. He identified himself as the man in the footage, and when shown a picture of Lauren, said that he, quote, wanted to look like her. He also reportedly spoke about growing up as a Christian, struggling with his sexuality, and how he hadn't been with anyone in a while. Finally, we know that in 2020, Zion was charged with robbery, kidnapping, and disorderly conduct, but was listed as a medium-low risk to reoffend and got a plea deal. He was released in November of 2022 and actually met with his probation officer after the murder. Interestingly, his mother works for a local county's probation department. So as of today, Zion is listed as a flight risk with a bail set at $1 million. Obviously, this is nothing short of terrifying, and it's a case that young women everywhere need to be aware of.
Wait, so they know he did it. He got a bargain? Make it make sense, bro.
This is Jimmy Savile, one of the worst pedophiles in world history. And let me warn you, this is a really disturbing story, so viewer discretion is advised. Jimmy Savile was an English DJ, radio and television personality, and a very, very famous entertainer. Jimmy came from practically nothing and became a superstar in England. When he was younger, during World War II, he worked in coal mines, but he eventually started wrestling and then DJing, and that's where he really rose to fame. Now, people in England loved Jimmy Savile. During his illustrious career, he was knighted by the Queen herself, and he was known to be great friends with the royal family. He also hosted a number of huge British television shows like Top of the Pops, and he had his own kids show called Jim Will Fix It. And when Jimmy died in 2011, the country of England mourned him. They were really sad to see him go, but that's also when all of these accusations came out. And soon people knew the truth about Jimmy Savile, and he was not a good guy. When Jimmy was alive, he was known to be charitable, and he worked at hospitals and volunteered his time helping with sick kids and young adults. But this is how he got access to his victims, by acting like the nice guy. And in his time on Earth, Jimmy Savile sexually abused over 400 kids and young adults. He would literally seek out children in their weakest states when they were in the hospital recovering from operations, and that's when he would abuse them. But something that I find extremely disturbing about this whole story is that everybody around Jimmy Savile knew that he was a pedophile, but no one was reporting it. In the hospitals that he volunteered at, nurses would literally tell the children to act like they were asleep when Jimmy was around because they feared what he would do to them. Friends of Jimmy's would make jokes about him being a pedophile in their comedy routines. Even powerful people at the BBC knew that Jimmy Savile was sexually assaulting children, hundreds of children, but did
nobody
nothing.
said
You
nothing?
see, he was worth too much. He was too valuable to them. And they needed him to make as much money for them as possible. One particularly gruesome and sick thing that emerged about Jimmy Savile after he died was that he used to go to the morgue in these hospitals, and he would actually have sex with dead bodies. He would also move the bodies around in the morgue, pose them, and take photos of them, laughing while he was doing this. And one nurse even reported watching Jimmy Savile wheel around the dead body of a 4-year-old child in a stroller. Yeah, this guy was incredibly twisted, and he affected so many people's lives. And another sad part of this story is that Jimmy Savile never really had to face any sort of repercussions for his actions while he was alive. When he died as a beloved public figure, somebody that people looked up to and adored. But behind closed doors, Jimmy Savile was a sexual deviant, a pedophile, and just a horrible human being. There is so much to this story, I'm telling you, I couldn't even cover this whole story in 10 TikToks, but if you want me to go into more details about all this, let me know and I'll post a part 2. Because this is literally only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Jimmy Savile and some of the horrible and atrocious things that he did while he was alive.
Most times, when you look at somebody and they look weird, you're probably right. I try not to be judgmental, but if you look weird to me, 9 times out of 10, you are weird. But hey, if you like what you saw, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord. But until next time, folks,